The morning of the binding ceremony dawned with an aurora that painted Kepler 4.42c's sky in impossible colors. Marcus had learned that this was considered an auspicious sign by the Ethereal Council. The cosmic forces were aligned for a historic event. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered at the temple, turning the normally serene structure into a diplomatic hub. Marcus recognized ambassadors from the Geomet Collective, the hive minds of Proxima, the Silicon Parliament, and even the notoriously reclusive quantum observers. Earth's delegation had grown to include xenosociologists, diplomatic attaches, and a full medical team standing by to monitor humanity's first interspecies marriage. "I feel like I'm about to become a lab specimen," Marcus confided to Azrael as they prepared for the ceremony. "We both are," she replied through their mental connection. "But perhaps that's fitting. This marriage will be studied for centuries to come." The binding ceremony itself was scheduled for solar noon, when the dimensional barriers were at their most stable. As the appointed time approached, Marcus found himself surprisingly calm. The nervousness he'd expected was replaced by a deep sense of rightness. As if every choice in his life had led to this moment, the Council of Seraphim materialized at the temple's center, their forms more brilliant than Marcus had ever seen them. The lead council member, who had introduced himself as Metatron, raised his hands for attention. "We gather today to witness an unprecedented union." His voice resonated through multiple dimensions simultaneously. "The binding of a human consciousness with that of a seraphim. This ritual has never been attempted across species lines, and the outcome cannot be predicted with certainty." Ambassador Thren translated for those species whose hearing couldn't process seraphim communication. "He's saying this is completely experimental and might not work." "Reassuring," muttered Dr. Kim from the Earth delegation. Metao and continued. "The participants have completed the preparation of souls and the exchange of essence successfully. Their spiritual frequencies are now compatible. However, the final binding requires the conscious will of both parties to surrender their individual existence in favor of a shared consciousness." Marcus felt Azrael's hand slip into his. Through their connection, he sensed her mixture of anticipation and ancient sadness. This ceremony would mark the end of 10,000 years of solitary existence for her. "Are you ready?" she whispered. "Let's find out what we become together." Marcus replied. The ceremony began with a harmonic convergence that made the air itself sing. The assembled delegates fell silent as reality seemed to bend around the temple chamber. Marcus felt the dimensional barriers that Azrael monitored daily pressing in around them, but instead of being terrifying, it felt like the universe itself was witnessing their union. "Marcus Chun of Earth," Metatron intoned. "Do you willingly surrender your individual consciousness to be bound forever with that of Azrael the Seraphim?" "I do," Marcus said firmly, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Azrael of the Third Sphere," Metatron continued, "do you willingly surrender your immortal existence to be bound forever with that of Marcus the Human?" "I do," Azrael replied, and her voice harmonized with itself across 17 different dimensional planes. What happened next defied every attempt at scientific documentation. The various recording devices brought by different delegations either malfunctioned or captured completely different versions of events. Marcus experienced it as a sensation of dissolving and reforming simultaneously, as if every atom of his being was being gently taken apart and rewoven into a new pattern. He felt Azrael's consciousness merging with his own, not overwhelming it, but complementing it. Where his thoughts were rapid and chaotic, hers provided structure and depth. Where her emotions had been controlled and distant, his brought warmth and immediacy. But the most remarkable thing was what happened to their combined awareness. Marcus suddenly understood cosmic forces in a way no human ever had. He could feel the gravitational dance of galaxies, the quantum fluctuations that threatened universal stability, the delicate balance that kept reality from tearing itself apart. But unlike Azrael's previous experience of these forces as a burden, Marcus experienced them as a vast, beautiful symphony. At the same time, Azrael experienced the universe through human senses and emotions. The joy of discovery, the bonds of friendship, the bittersweet beauty of mortality. These were concepts she had observed but never truly understood. Now they flooded through her consciousness with an intensity that left her reeling. The binding process took 17 minutes, though neither Marcus nor Azrael were of time passing. When it concluded, they stood before the assembled delegates as something entirely new. "It is done," Metatron announced, and there was something like awe in his ancient voice. "Behold, the first hybrid consciousness, neither fully human nor fully seraphim, but a new form of existence altogether." Marcus opened eyes that now held flecks of starlight, while Azrael's cosmic features had gained a warmth and expressiveness that was distinctly human. They looked at each other and spoke in perfect unison. "We are Marcus Azrael, guardian of the dimensional boundaries and seeker of cosmic truth." The reaction from the assembled delegates was immediate and varied. The quantum observers began rapid calculations about the implications for consciousness studies. The Silicon Parliament expressed concern about precedent for their own strict reproductive protocols. Earth's delegation simply stared in fascination and growing pride, but it was Commander Joe who asked the crucial question, "How do you feel? Are you still you?" Marcus Azrael considered the question with both human intuition and seraphim analysis. "We are ourselves, but more than we were separately," they replied, their voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. "We retain our individual memories and personalities, but they are now part of a greater whole." Dr. Kim stepped forward with her medical scanner. "Your biological readings are unlike anything in our databases. You're definitely still human-based, Marcus. But there are energy patterns I can't begin to explain, and I can feel the dimensional barriers more clearly than ever before." Azrael's component of their consciousness added through Marcus's voice, but also the beauty in their complexity, the artistry in their function. I had never noticed that before. Over the following hours, as the formal ceremony concluded and delegates began filing reports to their respective governments, Marcus Azrael began to understand the true scope of what they had become. Their hybrid consciousness could process information at seraphim speeds, while maintaining human creativity and intuition. They could perceive 17 dimensions simultaneously, but still appreciate the simple beauty of a sunrise. They had gained functional immortality, but retained the human appreciation for the preciousness of time. Most importantly, they were no longer alone in their cosmic responsibilities. The dimensional barrier between sectors 7 and 12 is showing stress fractures, Marcus Azrael observed during their first joint monitoring session. "I see it," they replied to themselves. "But look at the pattern of the fractures. It's not random degradation, there's an underlying harmonic structure." This was something Azrael had never noticed during 10,000 years of solo monitoring. The human component of their consciousness brought pattern recognition abilities that revealed beauty and meaning in what had previously been mere duty. "We can strengthen the barrier by working with the harmonic instead of against it," they realized. "Like tuning an instrument instead of forcing it into compliance." The repair work that would have taken Azrael days to complete solo was finished in hours, and the resulting barrier was more stable than it had been in millennia. News of the successful binding and its unexpected benefits spread rapidly through the galactic community. Within weeks, requests began arriving from other species seeking similar hybrid arrangements, not for marriage necessarily, but for the cognitive and spiritual advantages that cross-species consciousness sharing seemed to provide. "You've started something," Commander Joe told them during a follow-up visit. 3 different species have approached Earth about experimental consciousness sharing programs. The Geomet Collective wants to know if hybrid awareness might help them understand organic life forms better. The hive minds are fascinated by the idea of individual consciousness within collective awareness. Marcus Azrael smiled with expressions that were both human and divine. This was always humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, the ability to form connections across impossible differences. We just took it to its logical conclusion. But perhaps the most profound change came in their personal existence. Where Azrael had known only duty and Marcus had known only curiosity, together they knew purpose. Their cosmic responsibilities became shared adventures in understanding. Their mortality became precious time to be treasured rather than time to be feared. 6 months after the binding, they received an unexpected visitor. Seraphim Raphael, one of Azrael's former colleagues, materialized in their chamber with an expression of barely contained envy. "You look happy," Raphael said, clearly struggling with the concept. "We are," Marcus Azrael replied. "Complete in a way neither of us had ever been alone. The Council is considering allowing other Seraphim to seek hybrid binding with compatible species," Raphael sighed. The next morning brought unwelcome visitors to the temple. Marcus woke from an uneasy sleep on the chamber's crystalline floor to find 3 members of his research team standing at the entrance, their faces a mixture of concern and barely controlled panic. "Marcus, what the hell is going on?" Dr. Sarah Kim, his second-in-command, stepped forward with her hands raised peacefully. "The Ethereal Council came to our base camp before dawn. They said you'd violated sacred law and were facing execution." Marcus glanced at Azrael, who had remained motionless in meditation throughout the night. She opened her eyes but said nothing. "It's complicated," Marcus began, but Sarah cut him off. "Complicated?" "Marcus, they said something about forced marriage to avoid death. Please tell me you haven't lost your mind." Dr. James Wright, the team's cultural specialist, cleared his throat nervously. "The council was quite specific. They said if you don't complete something called a binding ritual within 6 days, both you and the Seraphim will be ... made. Marcus, that's not just death. That's complete erasure from existence." "I know what the stakes are," Marcus said quietly, "and I know how it sounds. But Azrael and I have talked about it. We're going through with the marriage." "Azrael?" Dr. Lisa Torres, their linguist, stepped forward. "You've named her?" "Marcus, this is not some alien romance novel. This is your life we're talking about." Azrael rose gracefully from her meditation pose. "Dr. Torres, is it not? Your translations of our historical texts have been quite accurate." Her voice carried none of its earlier warmth. Returning to the formal tone she'd used with the council, Lisa stared at the veiled Seraphim with professional fascination warring against human concern. "You speak English perfectly. I have been observing human expansion for decades. Your languages are not difficult to learn." Azrael turned to Marcus. "Perhaps you should explain the situation to your colleagues. They deserve to understand the choice you've made." Over the next hour, Marcus laid out everything that had happened. His team listened with growing disbelief and horror, occasionally asking questions that revealed just how unprecedented the situation was. "Let me get this straight," Sarah said finally. "You accidentally saw her without a veil, which is apparently the equivalent of seeing her naked in her culture, and now you either marry her or you both get erased from reality." "That's oversimplifying it," Marcus protested, "but essentially, yes. And you're okay with this?" James asked Azrael directly. "You're willing to bind your immortal life to a human you barely know?" Azrael was quiet for a moment before responding. "Dr. Wright, your species has been married to partners they barely knew for thousands of years. Arranged marriages, political unions, marriages of convenience, these are not alien concepts to humans. The only difference is the permanence of the bond." "The difference is that those marriages could be dissolved," Sarah pointed out. "This sounds like something much more permanent." "It is," Azrael confirmed. "The binding ritual will merge our life forces at a quantum level. We will share thoughts, emotions, and lifespan until death separates us." Lisa leaned forward intently. "From an anthropological standpoint, this is fascinating. How does the ritual actually work?" Azrael gestured and holographic symbols appeared in the air around them. "The ceremony requires 3 phases. First, the preparation of souls, where both parties meditate together to align their spiritual frequencies. Second, the exchange of essence, where we literally share part of our life force with each other. Third, the binding itself, where our souls are woven together by the collective will of my people." Marcus studied the floating symbols. "How long does each phase take?" "The preparation can take anywhere from hours to days, depending on how compatible your spiritual frequencies are naturally. The exchange is instantaneous but requires perfect synchronization. The binding..." Azrael paused. The binding has never been performed between a human and a seraphim. We don't know what will happen. That's not reassuring, James muttered. Nothing about this situation is reassuring, Marcus replied. But it's the choice we've made. Sarah stood abruptly. I can't just watch you throw your life away based on a few hours of conversation. Marcus, you don't even know this person, this being. What if you're completely incompatible? What if the marriage is miserable? You'd be stuck forever. And if we don't do it, we'll both be erased from existence, Marcus shot back. At least this way we have a chance. A chance at what? Marcus looked at Azrael, then back at his team. A chance to learn something new about the universe. About each other. About what it means to form a connection across species lines. He paused. Look, I know it sounds crazy. Hell, it is crazy. But when was the last time humanity backed down from something just because it was unprecedented? Over the following days, Marcus's team became reluctant assistants in preparing for the most unusual wedding in galactic history. Sarah used her medical expertise to run every scan possible on Marcus, documenting his baseline physiology for comparison after the binding. James researched every scrap of cultural information about Seraphim marriage customs. Lisa worked with Azrael to understand the linguistic components of the ritual. Meanwhile, Marcus and Azrael began the preparation of souls. The process was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. They sat facing each other in the center of the golden chamber, eyes closed, attempting to synchronize their breathing and heartbeat. At first, it felt like trying to tune two instruments that were fundamentally incompatible. I can feel your confusion, Azrael said during their first session. Your mind processes information in rapid bursts, jumping from one thought to another. It's single quotes chaotic. Sorry, Marcus replied, though he kept his eyes closed. I've never been good at meditation. My thoughts tend to race. Don't apologize. It's fascinating. Your species processes multiple streams of consciousness simultaneously. I experience thoughts in linear progression, each one flowing naturally into the next. As the hours passed, Marcus began to sense something beyond his own thoughts. It was like hearing an echo of a song he'd never heard before, beautiful and alien, but somehow familiar. Is that you? He asked, double quotes, yes, and I can feel your curiosity like a bright flame. It burns constantly, doesn't it? This need to understand, to explore, to discover. My ex-girlfriend used to say it was my most annoying trait, Marcus admitted. She was wrong. It's magnificent. I have forgotten what it felt like to hunger for knowledge. After 10,000 years, I thought I had seen everything worth seeing. By the third day, they could maintain synchronization for several hours at a stretch. Marcus found himself experiencing emotions he'd never felt before, the deep satisfaction of maintaining cosmic balance. The weight of responsibility for entire dimensional planes. The aching loneliness of millennia spent in solitude. This is what your existence has been like? He asked during a break in their meditation. For as long as I can remember, Azrael confirmed. It's why the younger seraphim often seek transfer to the outer dimensions, where the responsibilities are lighter and social interaction is possible. Why didn't you? I was too good at the work. The council decided I was too valuable to transfer. She paused. Perhaps that sounds arrogant. No, Marcus said firmly. It sounds like being trapped by your own competence. I know something about that. On the fourth day, the exchange of essence was ready to begin. The process required Marcus and Azrael to literally share part of their life force with each other. According to the ancient texts Lisa had translated, it would permanently alter both of them at a cellular level. Are you ready for this? Azrael asked. She had removed her veil again, and Marcus was getting used to the overwhelming beauty of her unveiled face. As ready as someone can be for something no human has ever done before, Marcus replied. What about you? I am terrified and exhilarated in equal measure, she admitted. The last time I felt this uncertain about an outcome was during my first century of existence. They joined hands at the center of the chamber. Azrael began to glow with soft golden light that spread up Marcus's arms and throughout his body. The sensation was indescribable, like being struck by lightning made of warm honey. Marcus felt his own life force responding, a blue-white energy that flowed from him into Azrael, the moment their essences mixed. Marcus's consciousness exploded outward. Suddenly, he could perceive 17 different dimensional planes simultaneously. He felt the cosmic forces that Azrael monitored daily, the gravitational stresses between galaxies, the quantum fluctuations that threatened to tear reality apart, the delicate balance that kept the universe stable, but more than that, he felt Azrael's memories flooding through him. Her first sight of a star being born, the crushing weight of being assigned to Earth's dimensional anchor point and watching human civilization develop over millennia, the loneliness of being too powerful to form casual friendships, too important to abandon her duties. At the same time, he felt Azrael experiencing his memories, his childhood fascination with space, the loss of his parents, the drive to discover something meaningful among ancient ruins. She experienced his very human emotions with an intensity that left her staggering. When the exchange was complete, they separated but remained connected. Marcus could feel a constant low-level awareness of Azrael's presence in his mind, and he knew she felt the same about him. How do? Marcus Chen had always been told that curiosity killed the cat. But as the lead-in archaeologist on the research vessel Endeavour, curiosity was literally his job. The ancient temple they discovered on Kepler 442c was unlike anything humanity had encountered in their 3 centuries of space exploration. The structure defied every known law of physics, floating 12 feet above the planet's surface without any visible means of support. The local, ethereal council had been surprisingly cooperative about letting humans study the ruins, though they'd been strangely insistent about certain areas being off-limits. Marcus respected boundaries, usually, but when his deep scan readings showed energy signatures behind what appeared to be a simple decorative wall, his scientific mind couldn't let it go. It was during the 3rd week of excavation that Marcus made his mistake. The ethereals had left for their evening meditation ritual, and his human colleagues were back at base camp analyzing the day's findings. Marcus told himself he was just going to take one quick reading, maybe a small sample if the wall composition was interesting. The decorative panel slid away easier than expected. When he applied pressure to what looked like a random symbol, behind it lay a corridor filled with the softest golden light Marcus had ever seen. The light seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat, drawing him forward despite every instinct telling him to call for backup. The corridor opened into a circular chamber, where the light emanated from a single figure standing at its center. Marcus's first thought was that he'd stumbled upon some kind of advanced hologram or AI projection. The being appeared roughly humanoid but was clearly not human. She, and Marcus somehow knew it was, female despite the alien features, stood nearly 8 feet tall with skin that seemed to be made of starlight itself, but it was when she began to remove what appeared to be a shimmering veil that Marcus realized the magnitude of his error. "Stop!" she commanded in perfect English, but it was too late. The veil fell away, revealing a face of such perfect beauty that Marcus felt his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Her features were sharp yet gentle, with eyes that held the depth of nebulae and hair that moved like liquid silver. But it wasn't just her appearance that struck him. It was the raw power radiating from her unveiled form that made the air itself sing with harmonics. The Seraphim, for that's clearly what she was. One of the legendary divine beings that governed this sector of space, stared at Marcus with a mixture of horror and resignation. "You fool," she whispered, her voice carrying undertones that made his bones vibrate. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Before Marcus could stammer an apology or explanation, the chamber filled with the sound of rushing wind and the golden light blazed brighter. 6 additional figures materialized around them, their forms crackling with barely contained energy. The ethereal council had arrived, and from their expressions, this was not a social call. "Azrael," spoke the tallest of the council members, his voice like distant thunder, "explain the presence of the human in the sanctum of veils." The Seraphim Azrael closed her eyes briefly before responding. The human stumbled upon the hidden entrance during his archaeological work. He has seen me unveiled. A collective gasp echoed through the chamber, followed by a silence so complete that Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. The council members began speaking rapidly in a language that sounded like singing crystals, their words too fast and alien for the universal translators to parse. Wait, Marcus finally found his voice. I don't understand what's happening. I was just exploring, I didn't mean to. Silence, mortal, commanded another council member. You have violated the most sacred law of our people. To see a seraphim unveiled without the bonds of marriage is forbidden. The penalty is death for both parties involved. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Death, but it was an accident. I didn't know. Ignorance is not absolution, the lead council member stated coldly. However, our laws are ancient and clear. There's one way to avoid execution. He turned his gaze to Azrael. The human must marry the seraphim within 7 solar cycles, completing the binding ritual that will forge their souls together for eternity. Only then will the violation be forgiven. Marcus looked between the council and Azrael, his mind reeling. Marriage to an alien being he'd just met? A marriage that would bind their souls together forever? It sounded like something out of a bad space opera. Azrael spoke quietly. The alternative is that we both face the dissolution, a form of execution that unmakes our very essence from reality. Neither of us would simply die. We would cease to have ever existed. That's impossible, Marcus protested. You can't just erase someone from... We are seraphim? Azrael interrupted. We exist on multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. Our technology is beyond your current understanding. Yes, we can unmake existence itself. The council leader stepped forward. You have 7 of your Earth days to decide, human. Use them wisely. Azrael will remain in the temple to contemplate her fate. Any attempt to flee will result in immediate dissolution. As the council members vanished in bursts of light, Marcus found himself alone with Azrael in the golden chamber. She had replaced her veil, but somehow the sight of her covered face was almost as unsettling as seeing her unveiled had been. I'm sorry, Marcus said helplessly. I truly didn't know. I was just doing my job. Your job? Azrael's voice carried a note of bitter amusement. Your job has condemned us both. Do you understand what marriage means to my people? It's not some simple ceremony. The binding ritual literally weaves our life forces together. Your emotions will become mine, your thoughts will echo in my mind, your lifespan will determine mine. I am immortal, human. I have existed for over 10,000 of your years. If I bind myself to you, I will die when you die. Marcus slumped against the chamber wall, the weight of the situation crushing down on him. Then don't do it. I mean, I don't want to die, but I won't ask you to sacrifice your immortality for my mistake. Azrael studied him silently for a long moment. You would choose death to spare me eternal bondage? It was my fault. My curiosity, my choice to ignore the warnings. I won't drag you down with me. Marcus managed a weak smile. Besides, they'll probably make my death quick. Yours too, I hope. The dissolution is not quick, Azrael said quietly. It is the removal of existence layer by layer, dimension by dimension. We would be conscious as reality forgets we ever existed. Marcus shuddered but held firm. Still my choice to make. Something shifted in Azrael's demeanor. She moved closer, and even through the veil, Marcus could sense her studying him intently. You truly mean that? You would face dissolution rather than force me into unwanted marriage? Yes, interesting. She was quiet for several minutes. And Marcus could hear faint humming that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Tell me about yourself, Marcus Chun of Earth. What drives a human to explore ancient ruins on alien worlds? Despite everything, Marcus found himself smiling. Same thing that drove humans to cross oceans and climb mountains back on Earth, I guess. We want to know what's out there. We want to understand. Sometimes I think curiosity is humanity's greatest strength and greatest weakness. And your people? Your family? What will they think when you don't return? Marcus's expression grew sad. My parents died in a transport accident 5 years ago. I've got a sister on Mars, but we haven't spoken in 3 years after an argument. I threw myself into my work instead of dealing with the grief. This mission was supposed to be my chance to make a discovery that mattered. Something that would justify spending so much time buried in ancient dirt instead of maintaining relationships. So you have nothing to return to? That's a harsh way to put it, but not really, no. My work was my life? Israel nodded slowly. I have observed humans for decades as you've expanded into this region of space. Your species is remarkably adaptable. You form strong emotional bonds, you create meaning from chaos, and you never stop reaching for something greater than yourselves. Right now, I'm just reaching for a way to fix this mess, Marcus said ruefully. Perhaps there is a way, Israel said quietly. But first, I need to understand something. When you saw me unveiled, what did you feel? Marcus thought back to that moment. Terror at first, then awe, I suppose. You were beautiful, but it was more than that. You seemed like a force of nature made manifest. Like seeing a supernova or the birth of a star system up close. Not desire. Not possession? No, Marcus said firmly. You're obviously not human. You're something far greater. I felt like I was in the presence of, I don't know, something divine, I guess. It was humbling. Azrael removed her veil again, and Marcus instinctively looked away. Look at me, Marcus. Reluctantly, he met her gaze. This time, instead of overwhelming beauty, he saw sadness in her nebula-deep eyes. For 10,000 years I have been alone, she said. Seraphim do not form casual relationships. We are too powerful, too long-lived. The few males of our species see me as a prize to be won, a symbol of status. The other females see me as competition. I have spent millennia in isolation, maintaining the barriers between dimensions, keeping cosmic forces in balance, and wondering if there might be something more to existence than duty. Marcus found himself leaning forward. That sounds incredibly lonely. It is. When the council spoke of,